Welcome, everybody. Today we have got Colin Kirk-Potter on Och, Brothers, Where Art Thou? Colin brings a rare mix of military discipline, creative thought, and raw vulnerability to the conversation around modern masculinity. A former Royal Marine Commando with operational experience in Afghanistan and Northern Ireland, he was voted most inspirational instructor by recruits at the Commando Training Centre. Recognition of his ability to guide young men through one of the toughest tests of character in the world. After a diagnosis of PTSD ended his military career in 2013, Colin rebuilt from the ground up with the support of his family. He's completed 2 Bob Graham rounds, the Ultra Trail de Mont Blanc, regarded as one of the most competitive trail ultra marathons in the world, and continues to serve his community as a race director and mountain leader on Dartmoor. An author and freelance writer, Colin uses storytelling to explore the balance between toughness and tenderness, qualities he believes are essential to modern manhood. Colin credits the wild moors and their chaos for keeping him grounded. Welcome, Col. How are you?
Thank you. I'm all teary-eyed after that introduction.
It's quite an intro. There's quite a lot packed in there. We could have put quite a bit more in, I think, but...
Yeah, it's great to see you, man. Thanks so much for giving us your time. And I want to tell you, first of all, thank you for your service.
Okay, thank you.
I feel like, I'm often so struck by what appears to be the distinction between an appreciation and recognition of service in America and over here. I feel like it's very much part of tradition and culture, that servicemen and women are upheld and kind of lionized in American society. And it saddens me to say I don't see that as much over here. So, profoundly, I want to say thank you for your service and thanks for giving us your time. Whereabouts in the world are you, brother?
I'm down on the southwest of England, just on the border with Devon and Cornwall, on the Tamar Valley. So It's a long way down from anywhere, really. So
okay, I mean that sounds quite inviting to me, I have to tell you. So we'd love to know a bit, really, just first about, before we get into the making of the man, I'd love to know a bit about the making of the boy, actually.
I was brought up in a Derbyshire town, a place called Ashbourne, on the edge of the Peak District. Lived there right up until I left to go to university. I didn't go far, I only went to Derby University. My parents are still alive, 80-ish pair of them. Both survived cancer. I have a younger sister who's a teacher, and she still lives up there. But I moved down here in 1997 when I joined the Royal Marines. So I'd worked, after university, I worked as a gym manager, and I got to about 24 and I thought, I still want to join the Royal Marines. That's all I ever wanted to do. 1982, when the Falklands War kicked off, and it's probably not a good example of what points you out in your career, but I watched it on TV as an 11-year-old watching 10 or 11-year-old watching guys jump out of helicopters, and you don't appreciate conflict at that age because you just see all the sort of machoism and stuff. And I thought, that's definitely what I want to do. But it took me a while to get around it because physically I was quite slight as a fell runner. I ran for school and up on the Peak District, and I was quite skinny. So while I was at university, I met a former Royal Marine and lived with him in digs, and he was something out of the comics. He was 6'4", absolutely beautiful, big square jaw, and I thought, I cannot achieve that, whatever. So it took me a while to actually go down and do it. Once I did it and joined the Royal Marines, I went straight through training. I wouldn't say with no problems. It was difficult because it's designed to be. It tests you physically and mentally. They don't weed out the weaknesses. They don't break you down and then rebuild you or anything. They harness on what you've got. But it was challenging, made it through, and then that was it. That was my career. Or so I thought for a long period, but didn't really work out that way.
One of the reasons why we started chatting about men's stuff, Pietro and I, is I'm a guy that didn't grow up with any kind of male example, and and I always say that. The army would have killed me. It couldn't have been any further from my mind, joining the services. And, I look back and I think, the discipline instilled, that the model of service, the camaraderie, the comradeship, and the brotherhood probably was exactly what I needed just at that time.
Yeah, it's got a bad reputation, obviously, but it is what you make it in any career. You're paid to do a job at the end of the day. So yeah, there is discipline, there is regimented, and you are restricted to a point. But in my mind, looking back at it, I still miss it every day. There's not a day go by that I don't miss it. But you can still be your own person. You're not made into a number or a machine or anything like that. You're still an individual. And I think that's across the board, military, not just the Royal Marines. I am very biased. But I think my eldest son's in the
It's
army.
okay, brother.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
My eldest is in the army, and he had an issue with that initially, saying, "Is that okay? I'm in the army, and you were in the Royal Marines." I went, "No, it's fine. You actually get a better trade in there, and it suits your mentality and your physicality and the person you are." So, no, I'd recommend it to anybody. It's definitely an eye opener. It definitely gives you an experience.
When you look back, you've gone from Afghanistan to the wild trails of Dartmoor, and how do you make sense of those two worlds?
It's difficult when you first come back, because it takes 34 weeks now to train a Royal Marine, and obviously then when you get to a fighting unit, you then actually train for the job. And then obviously Afghanistan's different to Northern Ireland, which is different to the Congo, or different to Macedonia, all these places. And then that you cannot detrain that. You can't have a period of time. You leave the service, you have a bit of decompression, you leave, but that stuff is still ingrained in you. So coming back to Civvy Street, it does take a massive amount of adjustment, and I don't think there's enough done for that. It's very expensive, I think, and it's probably futile, because you cannot take the Marine out of somebody. Dartmoor is a massive training area for the Royal Marines, so I spent most of my start of my career on Dartmoor, and I hated it. Every time it was on the training plan as we're going to Dartmoor, and you think, why? It's just a grim environment. It's boggy, it's wet. You see it for what it is, and I think if I was anywhere else, if I'd have said, like some of my colleagues have left and gone to live in Dubai, I think I'd struggle with that. I think the fact that Dartmoor offers still a bit of connection, but also is wild and it's open, and it's some of the most remote places in England. I think Knoydart in Scotland is very remote, but Dartmoor, you can be 3 miles from anywhere. Any sort of civilization.
It's so funny you would talk about Knoydart, because I've been to Knoydart a couple of times.
Beautiful.
And I imagine that there, I don't know if you've ever been, but
yeah,
there's a famous pub there, and it's like if you've ever watched Star Wars, like the Mos Eisley canteen.
Yeah.
It's just full of these very suspicious people that I'm absolutely sure don't have authentic passports,
no,
that are probably international gun runners, or there's
Allegedly.
there's some people there that are enjoying the fact that it's a fairly remote place.
Yeah, you have to get,
and they've got a new legend.
Yeah, you've got to get a ferry there, or I went round Lockmore and the pub in there, Inverary, I think it's the village. And they only,
That's right.
I think it's Inverary, and they serve McEwen's Export on draft, and I think that's it. But yeah, it's got a lot of history from training for the Second World War, the Commandos country as they call it up there. So, but yeah, it's remote, but it is exactly. Everybody carries a banjo, I think.
Do you think Dartmoor, in terms of a landscape, has given you a challenge as well? A challenge like you have almost a challenge on your doorstep every day.
Through having counselling, I mean, my counsellor, my wife, convinced that he saved my life. And he and I are chalk and cheese. We're completely opposite, and it took a while for us to get on. And he actually said, you need to surround things that challenge you, like Dartmoor will definitely challenge you in the weather, but also is on my terms and I'm comfortable dealing with it. Yeah, so yes, it is. It challenges me, but I'm up to the challenge, if you know what I mean. See, and that's important. Part of my recovery is challenging yourself a little bit, and you're never out of recovery. It's always there. You're just able to see the signs, but actually challenge yourself. But if you fail on something, then you've got the option and the ability to go back and change it and do it. And Dartmoor does give me that.
What does a good day look like for you now, Cole?
So it's get up at 5 o'clock, be work for 6:15 in the morning. It's a drive on the edge of the moor to my depot and go through the day. I find it challenging. Get back about 3 o'clock, spend a bit of time at home, and then I go and teach 2 or 3 fitness classes. So that's my general day. Today, again, up on the moor for 9 o'clock with 20 odd clients, 10, 11 miles running on, and the weather's horrendous down here. And then just chill in the afternoon with the dog and the family. So that's a good day. That is probably my favourite day. I don't know if you ever heard that Liam Gallagher actually do an interview about running, and he got up one morning, it sticks with me, he got up and he said, so you've taken up running? And he said, yeah, I either get up in the morning and drink 20 cans of Stella or I'll go for a run. And he said, and when I'm out there, it sorts me out and I've got to talk to that bloke and this and it in his own way. And then he's done it. It sorts him out, and it does the same for me a little bit. So
I think that Liam Gallagher is really bright, actually. I think he plays this character, but he's super sharp, you know, super sharp and very, very funny. It sounds just like something he would say.
Running is my sort of medicine of choice because it's very easy to choose other demons. And I had an issue with alcohol when I first was struggling with PTSD. But again, I can see it and I can deal with it, and I'm quite happy to have a beer now, but it is literally a beer, maybe 2 tops, just because I want to be able to stay in control. But running gives me the same as what alcohol does, but in a much healthier way. So
let me take you back to the Falklands unfolding. And did you feel that there was a space in your life that needed to be filled with something in particular? Did you were you lacking direction? Did you feel pulled in particular towards that kind of male environment? Or was it just the excitement?
I don't know about being attracted to a male environment. I was lost up until when I joined, and I think that's what turned me into a man, really. I had no idea. You join the Royal Marines, and the first thing I thought, well, I'm getting fed 4 meals a day. I've got told what clothes I've got to wear. This is great. This is fantastic. The responsibility has been taken off from me. And as for motivation, why I did it, the best line I ever heard was for one of my recruits I took through training. And you say, why are you joining the Royal Marines? And some people say, I want to go to war, and you're quite frightened of those people. But he just said, I ran out of chat-up lines. I didn't want to join it because it was to have friends or because it was macho. It was not, I didn't see it like that. I wasn't intellectually mature enough to actually work that out at the time. So it just looked like great fun. It just looked like play. It was taking away responsibility. I didn't want to make those difficult decisions. And I didn't know that at the time, but looking back at it, that's what it was. I didn't know what else to do. It's not that I didn't have a father figure. I had a father he was an accountant. My granddad was a Chindit, so he was special forces in Burma. But my immediate family wasn't in the military or anything like that. I just didn't know what else to do, and that's the only thing I could see myself doing.
Did you have a strong friendship group before you went into the Marines?
No, I didn't have a close friendship group. The Royal Marines gave me that, even though some of them were faceless people, really, nameless people, but they wore the same badge. They did the same thing as I did. So it is like a brotherhood almost. So
That's really interesting, Cole, because prior to starting this, we put out a number of questionnaires, and we had scores of respondents. And one of the questions was, how many friends do you feel that you have, that you could call on in tough times? And loads of guys said, I'm lucky if I've got one.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
And no one said more than, on one hand, not one respondent said more than 5.
No.
And I think I'm sure there's something You know, I find it in 12-step fellowship, there's something about being forged, an experience, you know, kind of forged together, that commonality, that almost like it's the same language, a shared experience, shared lived experience, where you don't need to you can speak in shorthand, you know, you don't need to get through a whole long-winded thing. And what I've learned as well is that actually, I guess it's horses for courses, right? It's like, you know, there are some people who are in a season in their life that will be there and they'll be ready to help with one set of problems. And then there'll be, you know, another person to be able to help with a different set of problems. And people have got such busy lives nowadays too. I think, you know, people are so reluctant to speak frankly about this. We're all so busy. You know, we've all got stuff going on. So let me take you back to 2013, and you were diagnosed with PTSD.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you remember that moment. What was it like, and how did it change the course of your life?
It explained a lot. You're in denial mainly, but I went off the rails, made bad decisions, some really horrendous decisions, and you think, why am I doing that? But you think that's normal. And I had no idea, and by this time I'm 42 years old, acting like I'm 20 years old. Decided this can't go on. I'd moved out of home a little bit because my behaviour was erratic, so I lived in my VW camper van. And I just spend all my money on alcohol, and then I took digs on camp for a little bit, and I was taking recruits through. It was quite common for me to, you know, drink a bottle of port, and just get very roily, we call it. The Royal Marines will sort everything out. Yeah, this is me. I'm tough. Blah blah blah. And you don't see it. You're completely in a bubble. There were certain things I can look back on now, and you think, okay, so we looked at selling the house to move to where we are, and I'm having to put paintings up that I'd got from a charity shop on the wall because I'd recently just replastered these head-shaped holes in a studded wall. I remember some guy going, "They're an interesting selection of artwork." None of the kids saw it. My wife experienced flashbacks that I had in the middle of the night. She still watches me like a hawk now, to telltale signs and stuff. It's probably the most stressful period of her life, still is, you know, dealing with somebody like that. But it basically came to a head, and I was taking some recruits on a pistol range, and the OC, the officer commanding, Major Terry Price, who was a bit old school, he got me in the office and said, there's been a few things said and this, that and the other. It was 10 o'clock in the morning, and he asked me when was the last time I had a drink, and I joked with him and said about an hour ago. So and we were on pistol range. So he said, yeah, we need to get this sorted. So I was taken down to Department of Care and Mental Health in Plymouth. Saw a few mates down there I'd served with. And I was thrust into an office, filled out a questionnaire, and an officer, Lieutenant Commander Coatsey, South African, I think, he was sat behind a desk, Royal Navy officer, wearing an Hawaiian shirt. And I was
going to say that they're not famous for their empathy.
I was thinking, I'm here because apparently I need my bumps being read, and you're sat wearing that. I wouldn't have a word. And the place is, I could get my head around it. I was like, really? And he just said, don't worry, things in the rear view mirror will get far and further away. And I was like, I have no idea what you're telling me. You've never experienced combat. You've sat behind a desk. So whatever. And then he introduced me to Danny, I'll name him. I won't tell you his surname, so he'd be embarrassed. Who was my counsellor, who's a former Royal Navy. And he was, initial impression was a drip. He spoke very monotone. He looked me straight in the eye, but was very relaxed. And initially I thought, you're just going through the motions. And I have no idea. I thought, if we're going to sit down and have counselling, then I need to have somebody I could have empathy with. And there was no connection. That first meeting, Laura was down there, my wife, and she said, you need to get this sorted. And I went, what do you mean? And she said, this needs to be sorted. It was an ultimatum almost. And it turns out I was textbook. Now, I was very fortunate in the age that I was to get it seen, to get it sorted. I think there are people who are Falklands veterans. I don't think there's any veterans left from the Second World War now. I think Gulf War right through are in complete denial. I've got a chap I served with. Nobody knows where he is. He was spotted in Thailand somewhere the last time. I've had colleagues who've passed away. So I was the lucky one, mainly because of Laura, because she spoke to Major Tel Price and said, we need to get him sorted. What can you do? And I'd gone from serving in an operational environment to then training recruits. It was really, really, really tough time. And then one day, Danny, I came into his office, I filled out the form he asked to, I sat down and we sat in silence, and then he had a racing bike in the corner. And I said, what's that? It's not yours. And he said, yeah, it's mine. I'm training for a triathlon. I was like, okay. And then we struck up a conversation. I said, I hate cycling. How's your running training? And he said, I don't run. I said, well, you need to for a triathlon. And we just bonded from there onwards. And I had EDMR, eye desensitization therapy, which I thought was a load of hocus pocus. But actually was really effective. It's not hypnotism or anything like that. It's just whatever, it worked. But I had a goal that I needed to, for my family's sake, I needed to get it sorted. So I had to, it was my next challenge. I had to work it out.
So you've presented with, drinking too much, you're behaving erratically, you moved out of home.
Yeah.
In the main, relationships breaking down with your partner. And this has been explained to a guy who you've had a stuttering relationship with as a counsellor to start with. And when did you feel the progress starting? I mean, what did that look like?
I was physically sick in my mouth on one occasion, because you go back with EMDR and you revisit things. And some of the stuff you were coming back with, memories were sort of blurred and different things. And I had sort of survivor guilt was one of the main things they said. Not sure about that. But it sort of clicked and everything started to make more sense. Danny, the counsellor, said, all your memories, they're all over the place. What the EMDR, what talking stuff through and chatting to Laura about. She would ring me after every session as I sat in the car, and I'd be in tears, because memories had started to connect. And it was exactly like that filing cabinet. It was all sorted. All the memories were in my head, were all processed and had a meaning and were all connected. And I'm quite a visual learner. So in that sense, I thought, that makes complete sense to me. And as soon as I grasped that, I went, yeah, it's just life in a green suit. That's the job I did. That's what I was paid to do, and shit happened. And fortunately, I've still got an amazing wife and family and friends. It was a couple of years. I mean, it's still there. But I can talk about it. I couldn't have done this. I'd have flicked you both the V signs and told you where to do one. I said, because neither of you presumably you've ever served and ever been shot at or had an IED blow up right next to you or anything like that. So how the hell do you understand? But PTSD is not, and this is going back right to your first comment, Ross, about thank you for your service. I've never been up to a milkman or a postman and said thank you for your service. But it's his job or her job. Being a serviceman is exactly the same. It's their job. I know the Americans are really keen on it. They'll give you a pint, and I've been bought beers and stuff. And I always say thank you for it. But why am I being thanked when, for what you've done in your life, you should also be thanked for? It's just a job. And that's...
Well, far be it from me to argue with the Royal Marine, sir. If you look at the
I am the most chilled out. My days of throwing punches are long.
But if you look at the fatalities likely, on your milk round compared to serving in Afghanistan.
Yeah, but they could have something happen in their life, was what I'm saying. PTSD.
I know, brother. I get it. And do you know what? That I think that humility really serves you well. I do. But Pietro and I were talking about this during the week. I have a personal bugbear about where we are in terms of patriotism in this country, and in terms of having an appreciation and trying to lose the sense of entitlement that my generation and generations following have for the security that people like you have built, actually. So that's why I say thank you for your service.
I appreciate that, and it is warmly welcome, the thanks, but it's literally on some of the stuff. So, I don't mind saying this. I think Afghanistan, I have no idea where the end to justify my recovery. Obviously, when we pulled out of Afghanistan, and obviously the Taliban have taken over I mean, democracy is not really working for us at the minute. So, who are we to preach our democracy on them? And I'm not saying the Taliban is their way of life is the right way, obviously, because they've just killed all the internet, and obviously women are oppressed. But I've seen girls there, young girls, sort of, looking at when my kids were younger, at 6, 7, 8, who were having an education, could walk freely around the shuras, the village. And I'm hoping that 10 years down the line, they're now sort of 18 and they're going, actually, you know what? I remember when we could walk freely down the streets, and some of the atrocities that as a culture they have it's their culture, but I disagree with it. But I'm hoping that they'll be able to actually stand up and say, you know what? I want to go back to that. I'm not saying the Western world is perfect, but they're entitled to an education. So that's what I hold to. I'm hoping that we made an impression on them that they can actually rise up in their own career and take charge themselves.
I had never thought about that, brother, actually, and I think that's really positive because, with everything that's going on in Gaza right now, without wishing to go too much into geopolitics, because the notion that even just for a time in Afghanistan, girls and women were allowed to drive cars, and they were allowed to be educated and express themselves in a manner, much far closer to the liberty that we enjoy over here. Hopefully that has planted the seed, because it's not lost on me that after. Was it finally Obama that came out of
Obama said that was
America?
It.
That was it, and left in a very short order, and essentially handed the Taliban back the keys. And then you're thinking, what about? I imagine, again, I haven't served, but I imagine you're thinking, well, what about my friends that I've lost? What about the casualties of war over there? What was it all for? And I imagine that it's a lot softer on the heart to have that fond aspiration than to think it was for nothing.
It's the only way you can't. I mean, I can't get bitter and twisted about it, because I don't believe that is the right way. I just think that we were there to do a job. We did that job to the best of our ability. I made decisions on when the boss was killed, and there was a few of us who were then had to step up and take over. And you have to justify it in that way, I think. Something I picked up on about, obviously, I don't want to get in a fight with Royal Marine and this, that, and the other, is that, and that's, obviously talking about masculinity and things, and the lantern-jawed, green beret, strips to the waist commando is the stuff of, Second World War comics, and that was what it was all around. Most Royal Marines I know, I'm 5'9", fairly lightweight. There's not a lot to me, and some of them have got so many masculine traits. Some are into poetry and stuff that you wouldn't, which is not unmatched.
Perish the thoughts.
Yeah, terrible, terrible. How dare they? But they just do normal things. You know, I write creative writing, which I've had a few bits published. I never wanted it published; it was just for me. But yeah, there you go. But it's that we're all seen as, you know, excuse my French, cock-swinging commandos. That's you know, you beat people over the head and go into and do whatever. That's what your job role was to do. But it was much about peacekeeping as anything. And guys can have a completely flip side to it. And I say to my clients when they go up and do a race or whatever, the last quip that I gave them is #don't be shit.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I've got a good friend. I mean, I used to tread the boards. I used to be an actor, and I've still got a few actor friends. And one of the things we used to say to each other before we went on stage or we had a job was, "Don't be shit." And it's a high, you know, to say that to an actor who's already pretty kind of like, you know, worried about being shit. But yeah, and I think "don't be a dick" is one of my favorite things to say. You know, make yourself useful and don't be a dick.
Yeah.
That's what I always say to people about trying to get into the industry that I'm in.
Yeah.
You know, make yourself useful and don't be a dick.
It's been nice. There's a quote from Full Metal Jacket, Stanley Kubrick's film, and they've got obviously the drill instructor, and he's there with all the recruits. And I tell this to a lot of people I speak to, clients and things. And I said, and he's marching up and down the rank and file of all these conscripts in the film from all different walks of life, religion and races and creeds. And he comes out with, I won't repeat what I say because it's offensive, but he says, "I do not look down on X, Y, Z." And he stereotypes all the racial stuff. And he says, "To me, you are all equally worthless." And I took that because they're all the same. They're in training for Vietnam. I've served with people from all over the country and all over the world. And they're still human beings.
When I think about a Marine and your job, I think about, you know, peacekeeping and high pressure zones and that sort of environment. I suppose I don't think about your downtime. I don't think about time in barracks. Is there a lot of time afforded for that bonding? Is it?
Yeah, there's too much time, really. On my last deployment, so morale was really low, and as a unit, we lost 7 KIA. I hate to think how many were injured with life-changing injuries. 2 from my own troop, the troop boss, and good friend Sam. Others were injured, and the interpreter, because he was out with us, Abdullah. He was with us. He was killed as well, and he was treading the same ground we were. So to keep morale up, I decided that with some of the other seniors to say, how about we nominate somebody to cook in our little compound an evening meal from all the rations we've got. Make it as flamboyant as you like, and then we'll all grade it. And, you know, whether it be corned beef, hash or sausage, whatever, just to keep that morale up. Because between patrolling and sentry duty and radio watch, a lot of lads did exercise. I'd run up and down inside the camp. I measured out a 50-metre stretch, and I'd go up and down there till I'd done 3 miles. Lads would use some of the resistance equipment that we've managed to beg, steal and borrow, scaffolding poles, jerry cans of water. A lot of lads watch TVs on their little small computers. But if they're on their own and they're quiet and they're not part of the team, that's when I used to get worried. Bear in mind, this is the guy who was then diagnosed with PTSD later on, but it was a case I need to keep not focused on what's going on the other side of that door, but you know, what we're all about, why we're here. And you pass the time, it's 6-7 months out there, you know, so and we'd go home for 2 weeks, and I can't remember any of that coming home. My dad, you came to visit me, you went into town, you had a few beers, you came back, and then you just disappeared. I was like, oh yeah. And Laura can't really remember either. And I said, yeah, and then I went back early because one of the guys in our troop had been killed. And I found out on social media. So I don't agree with that 2 weeks off, because then you're sent back in from that environment of putting 2,000 rounds through a GPMG to shopping in Tesco's with no downtime, no decompression, nothing. It's just straight there, 2 weeks off with your family who have they say that they understand and they get it. It said, I know, it must be horrible. And you think, you have no idea. And how would they? It's not their fault. and all.
And you wouldn't want them to.
No, God, no. I mean, I've shared a lot with Laura. Um, I shared with a civic counsellor, which I started with before I met Danny. And she said, just tell me what's bothering you. So I told her graphically, and she was in tears. And I was like, I'm so sorry. You have no, it's not their fault. So, yeah, there is, in the downtime, it's hard. People dealt with it a different way, learning guitar, doing whatever, but you just needed to keep an eye on everybody. And that's the same in your own family. If you've got a child who disappears on a Xbox 24/7, is he okay? Is everything okay?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's the same for us civilians, right?
Exactly.
If you spot,
it's no different. It's going back to what I said about it's a job. You deal with it. If you're on the city in London and you're high stakes buying and selling, I have no idea what they do. Obviously completely green, but I have an impression that it's possibly they're dealing with pension funds and things. Are they okay? But it's a job. They've chose to do that job. Doctors, fire brigade, people who are obviously on the front line and see road traffic collisions. Anybody. You could be, at a festival, a music festival, a gig in Manchester, and an incident happened. The Ariana Grande concert, and that person, she's got to deal with that as well. So it happens to us all. Shit happens, doesn't it? So, but it's the job. So you just have to deal with it. You have to deal with what's going on with your kids, with your family, with your own personal self, with your relationships. It's just how you deal with that.
You launched Run Venture Limited, right? This was after you came back? Was it after the PTSD?
Yeah, sort of after
you found out you had PTSD.
Yeah, after that, and I didn't know what to do as a job. So I started to make little running signs. And I set up there's a race in Tavistock, the Tabby 7, and I got a gazebo and I made running maps. I'm a bit of a map geek. I like maps, and I made wooden hearts with maps on it, and then went to this race where there's about 200 people, set up a stall. They said it's fine, and I decided to sell running gizzards and things like that. And then I went one step further. I needed some running shoes. Couldn't believe how expensive they are. I was sponsored by Solomon a long time ago. So I got free shoes. And the military, I raced for the Royal Marines, they gave me free shoes. I went to buy a pair of shoes. Couldn't believe how expensive they are. And the service to get those pair of shoes, because everything's different. I don't know if you've got something that you can relate to that is personal to you. You can't just pull one guitar off, or, you need something that's personal, fits yourself. And the service I got in 3 different shops was so shoddy. I thought I could do a lot better than that. I thought I could change and make it an experience. Actually, come in, you can get a muffin, you can get a tea cake, free cup of coffee, sit down, book an appointment. You got me for an hour who knows a complete geek about everything that's running shoe world, and I could work out what you need. When we had 3, the unfortunate thing is A, COVID, and B, I'm too generous and I'm not really much of a businessman. So I'd give people discounts all the time. People who would ask for advice, I would give that advice freely, and then they'd walk out and Laura would say, how much do they spend? I went, nothing, but they'll come back, and they never did, because then they'd buy online. So business rates are really expensive, rent's really expensive. It's going back to that point where the Royal Marines did everything for me, provided I didn't get in trouble, which happened a few times. I got paid at the end of the month. This, you had to work for it. So, but yeah, it was.
I've got to ask you, brother. It's preyed on my mind, because if you were sponsored by Solomon and ran for the Marines, you got to be pretty quick on your feet. What sort of times are we talking about?
Yeah. So back in the day, I did an hour 19 half marathon. I did a 2:42 marathon. Hated every minute of it.
Wow.
Hated every minute of it, because they were all on road. I went to a track session once as a youngster, and they said, why don't you try? And I was like, it's boring. Well, running around a track, what would I want to do? I could go and run in the Peak District. I can run on Dartmoor. The UTMB took me 24 hours or whatever it was to run around that. I used to be quick, but I don't run for that anymore. I don't run to escape. I run because I enjoy doing it. I don't do it because I see so many people out there running and it looks like they're in pain. I want to say to him, are you actually enjoying this? Hell no. So why are you doing it? Oh, wait, whatever. Find something else. If you hate it.
All right. I have to ask you then. Don't tell me that you enjoy ultra marathons. I can't. I can't make that leap. I can't understand that.
It's brilliant because as soon as you get to a hill, you're walking. One of my old coaches, Rambo, that was his nickname. He used to carry a marble, and he'd roll this marble completely eccentric. He'd run without a shirt on. It was completely mad, but he'd throw this marble out on this trail in front of him, and if it rolled back to him, he'd say, "This is a hill. We're walking." And then you'd get to a checkpoint, and there's melon, there's pork pies, there's chocolate, there's flat Coke. It's like a free feed every 5 or 6 miles. It's fantastic. The camaraderie. You're not running with somebody. Having ran on the track competitively, I'm looking over my shoulder. Where's he? You see the ups and downs, but you see it coming. How do you deal with that? Is my form good? And am I hydrated? Etc. Etc. Don't get me wrong. It's the last one I did was this year, the 75-mile Dartmoor round. I'd not trained for it at all. Just somebody was doing it. So I said, yeah, let's go and do that. And it was hard, but I knew why it was hard because I'd not done any training. But even if I'd trained, it would still be hard because I'd have gone quicker.
I'm just listening to those foodstuffs that you named every 5-6 miles, and all I'm thinking is indigestion. Like that's all I can think, and I'm all that bouncing about in my body is like
you need to eat it. People use those gels, those chemical stuff, and I'm like, what is that about? Why would you?
Cole, when the business didn't work out, when the business went under, how I don't know how better to ask this, but how did that feel in the sense, you built something up after being at such a low point because it was COVID? Did it feel like it fairly inevitable? Did you have time?
No. I mean, we survived after COVID. The local community helped us out. We took the bounce spot loan, which was a mistake, and we just started to owe a lot of money. And the COVID changed how people shopped, and everybody was all clapping everybody, and everybody was all about community. As soon as that ended, it was almost everybody went too far the other way. It was like you stretch a piece of elastic and everybody's really helpful, but when it actually went back to normal, it went beyond it, and I took it really hard, really personally. The final day I shut the door, I rang Laura in tears because Royal Marines cry a lot, and I said, I've nearly thrown a guy through the window. He came in to buy a pair of shoes. He moaned that he had to drive all the way to Plymouth because there was no running shops around. Ours was the only one left. He'd seen these shoes. I used to let people try on shoes and run around the block to see how they feel. You need to test these things. He tried on every pair of shoes. I gave him a cup of coffee, decent coffee, barista, did the whole lot. And he said, what's your Wi-Fi code? And I said, oh, it's up there on the wall. He got it. And he bought the same shoes that he test drove for about £5 cheaper, and he spent 3/4 of an hour with me. And I went back to my days of not being a very nice person, struggling with PTSD, and I went, if you don't get out now, you're not going to leave through the door, you're going to leave through that window. Please leave. You need to get out now, because it was almost a Hulk moment. I was raging, and that was it. I shut the door, I locked it, rang Laura. She was on her way home from work. She pulled over and said, are you all right? I said, no. I said, that's it. I closed the door. I can't say it's as hard as suffering with PTSD, but I did feel a failure. I think the PTSD thing, it wasn't my responsibility. I was affected by an external circus. It wasn't me, whereas I was the director. I was responsible for that business. I had employees. It was really, really hard. I felt like I let a lot of people down. Yeah. I've not fully come to terms with it. I can deal with what happened in the Corps. I find it really, really, really challenging.
You still find it challenging now?
Yeah, massively. Yeah.
You've lived versions of traditional masculinity, Cole, toughness, leadership, discipline, and also you embrace creativity, writing and openness. How do you define masculinity today?
You watch certain programs with Victorian men, and on the outside, Victorian men were the perfect gentlemen. They would hold doors open. they would just be nice. They're not a dick, or they're really nice. The unfortunate thing, behind closed doors, the way society was, women were oppressed and what have you. I'd like to think about me and masculinity is be like that Victorian gentleman, that peacock, and be that genuinely nice person, and then still back that up with some sort of material afterwards. Don't just say you're going to do something and be nice. Actually do that and lead by that example. Actually do what you think should be the right thing to do. Actually act it out and be that person. There's a time to be rough and tough and be what everybody thinks as a Royal Marine Commando is the height of masculinity. But it's actually acknowledging that that is a gift that, you know, I've been trained to do, but also I need to be able to appreciate and actually empathize with everybody else, because there was lots of lads in training who didn't make it. It doesn't mean they're less a person, does it? So I think that's how I define it, is that be the best you can be like that Victorian male is on the outside, but underneath you've still got to back that up with being just a genuinely nice person. And I think feminism is great, masculinity is great, and I think we have got a little bit lost somewhere. We don't know our place. I'm afraid of our boys, and you know what happens when they speak to a girl in the pub. Is it all going to go wrong? Are they going to get in trouble? Whatever. And my advice to them is just be nice, just be yourself, and be honest, be kind. Say please, thank you, shake somebody's hand, hold the door for somebody, whether they're male or female. It doesn't make no difference. Just treat people as you want to be treated. I know that's a cliche, but that's in a very roundabout, rambling way. That's how I can define it, really. So,
Yeah, thanks, Colin.
Lovely stuff, brother.
So finally, I think the question that we ask all our guests, all two of them, so far,
that's good.
The question that we ask all our guests is, what are you excited about at the moment? And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can be very mundane.
What my kids can achieve. Can they exceed what Laura and I have done? Can they find their own way? Are they happy? That's what I'm excited about. I want to see where their journey is, and if I can have a little bit of an influence on that and steer them in the right way, then I'm going to be a little piece of that. Great. They've got to find their own way at the end of the day, and they're doing exceptional things in their own way. That's what I'm excited about. Yeah.
Love it, brother. Love it. Thanks so much for coming in. It's been great to listen to your story, and I really appreciate your sharing.
No problem.
And just as an addendum, I'm really excited about the fact that Manchester United just beat Liverpool 2-1.
You know what? I was going to mention that at the start, because one of my boys is a massive Liverpool fan.